This is Chewy. This is Junebug. I was going to say June Bell. And then we have, why don't we go ahead and pan over there and see the very pretty Pixel dog. All right, let's go ahead and come back to me. All right, so this is their Roadmap to Success video. And we just got done filming the video that's above this with June, which is the tips and tricks for loose leash walking. Now, June is so smart, she's going straight for the bag of treats. And you've had, sit, which we basically taught her to do in the session. She probably doesn't have it down completely, but she's sitting a lot faster because she recognizes that's a great way to get attention from the human. So these dogs, I think, are all stressed out for various reasons. They're all shelter dogs. They've all been rescued out of a really horrible environment. Oh, there we go, Chewy. Before I came in, he wouldn't have anything to do with me. Pixel wouldn't do anything with me. She's cleaning herself. And she's definitely the bravest. Sit. But this is a sign that the dog is good and comfortable because it's coming up on its own without a request. I was trying to request before we started this and wouldn't come up. But as soon as I ignored, the dog did it on its own. It feels empowered to do so. So one of the things we like dogs to do, sit. Passive training is one of the things we're talking about, which I'm doing right here. Is to reward the dogs for doing things that we want and not ignore or not correcting them or well, really correcting is a good word for it. A lot of us train our dogs to misbehave. The dog barks and we go shh or be quiet or no bark. Well, every time we do that, we're telling the dog barking is a great way to get my attention. Now, barking is an issue that all these dogs have. So we went over the principles of counter conditioning. Counter conditioning is where I squish the treat, let the dog start chewing on it, and then someone else knocks very lightly in a very low intensity, far enough away for the dog to be able to continue taking the treat. And then before the treat is gone, the stimulus needs to stop. So I only knock when the dog is in the middle of chewing the treat. At first it's just a light like that, and eventually it's... Now before the session, all three of these dogs would have been barking like crazy for that. Hey buddy, yes. And we've made some good buddies here. And so by using counter, now these dogs, I think that they're reacting this way because they didn't really have any rules and they really don't even know any commands. And so it's hard for them to have much confidence. And so they think that they're in charge of their humans because they get at the same height as their human, which is one of the ways that we say we're equals. And then the dogs nudge the humans like this. Ah! So that's her way of playing. But we don't want her to chew on Guardians because she's going to chew harder and harder. And just like I might like doing something, doesn't mean everybody else likes it. Just because I like it doesn't mean everybody else has to accept it. And teaching dogs good bite inhibition is always a good idea. So every time she puts her teeth on you like that, yelp like a little girl, a lot higher pitch than I actually just did. Pull your hand back and freeze for a second. And then if she does the same thing, then you can go back to petting her. And as soon as her teeth touch you again, yelp and pull away. Okay, now I think the reason these dogs are acting this way is the lack of rules and being able to tell their guardians to pet them on demand has got these dogs thinking that they're in charge of the humans. But the humans don't see and recognize the dogs as authority figures. So they ignore the dogs. So the dogs are barking, somebody's here, somebody's here, somebody's here, nobody listen to me, somebody's here, they just bark, 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 bark. Come. And we passive training. And we sit, more passive training. And so these dogs get stressed out just like a parent does when their children don't do what they want them to do and start doing things that are dangerous, sit. The parents get stressed out and they might say something wrong or lash out to the child. They don't mean to. They mean the best. But because the children are putting themselves in dangerous situations, that stresses the dogs out, the parents out. In this case, the dogs think that they're in charge of the humans, but the humans don't listen to the dogs. Let's not do that on camera. Well, let's not do that ever. Yes, Freudian sleep not. Yeah. But for dogs, we need them to start. So Chewy was just starting to chew on the furniture. Now, something I forgot to tell the guardians, I did tell them anything their dog is doing when they pet them is with the reinforcing. So I pet right now, I'm telling the dog, because you jumped up on top of me, I started to pet you. So there's nothing wrong with the dog being on your lap if I invite the dog in my lap. But if the dog jumps up on top of me, it's kind of claiming me. Come. Oh, you're playful now, huh? I give you another opportunity to do that. Ah! Rolls over like that, do not. That's submission. I'm sorry, I'm taking that's too far. I don't want the dog to be submissive. I just want them to have to put their bite on me. So Chewy was starting to chew on, ironically, some of the furniture. And so anything your dog is doing, this is what I didn't tell the guardians, anything your dog is doing in your presence that you don't specifically say no, you're saying, I like that. I give it 2 thumbs up. So anything your dog is doing, you need to correct and disagree with, unless if the dog is trying to get attention from you. then that's the time you would ignore that. Now, that I would not ignore. What I would do for that is just say the dogs are not allowed to be on this part of the furniture. The dogs actually have some of their own furniture they can get on, which I would say is fine, but the dog should not be allowed on the same height as the humans, because that confuses them and thinking that they're peers. And then on top of that, they get to jump up on the humans to get attention, or nudge the humans to get attention. Well, if I tell somebody what to do over and over again, they keep on doing it, then after a while I feel like I am clearly in charge of this person. If I'm in charge of them, then I'm responsible for their well-being, and that adds pressure to me. So these dogs think that they're doing their humans a solid by correcting and lashing out and doing all this stuff. The humans don't listen to them. I have a very funny show going on right now. It's hard for me not to, because one of the dogs over there, go ahead and shoot that real quick. So she's just burying herself in there. There we go. All right, come back to me. Playtime's over. But basically, I think these dogs think that they're protecting their humans. Their humans are not listening to them, which stresses out the dogs and make them lash out even more. And the more this happens, the more this continues to happen. This is a vicious cycle. So one of the things, the way that I like to flip what I call the leader-follower dynamic. Of course, you sit next to each other now. I need a picture of you when my camera's there. But for the leader-follower dynamic, what we want the dogs to do is identify the humans as being the authority figure. Dogs are all about what they see us do. Well, most of the time we go to work and then we come home and we're relaxed, we're tired. Well, the dog sees us acting pretty lazy. We're not enforcing rules. So that's why it's so important that we have rules and structure, so the dogs can see us acting like a leader by enforcing those rules. Even if it's something they don't particularly like, they do see us acting like a leader. Now remember, we have 3 seconds to correct or reward the dog in order for them to make the connection. And anything our dog is doing when we pet it is what we're amplifying and reinforcing, include unbalanced states of mind. I think this is another mistake the guardians were doing, is they meant the best, but they were petting the dog every time the dogs got nervous or anxious. And because of that, they were making the dogs a little bit more nervous or anxious or excited or whatever it is. And so Chewy's going around claiming all sorts of stuff right now. I saw that we have a gray squirrel. The house actually has a real squirrel. Okay, so for the dogs, the lack of rules and structure, I think, is a big contributing factor. So some of the rules I went over: not being allowed to be in the kitchen when humans are preparing food, not being allowed to be within 7 feet of a human who's eating food, having to sit before we let them go in or out of a door, stopping as we go up and down the stairs and not letting the dog race ahead of us, teaching the dog to walk next to us with a loose leash is another great thing to do. Walking is not a very efficient form of exercise, but if we keep the dog in the heel position next to us, that is a great way to help train them, because they're developing self-control. They're the ones doing the job as opposed to us jerking the leash and doing the rest of those things. Now, I want the guardians to start, yes, I was just going to talk about feeding. So right now the dogs are free fed, and the wild dogs spend 90% of their time looking for food. So when we just put it in a bowl, they're like, okay, great, what do I do with the other 89% of my time? But also they're going to be eating in front of us and in front of each other. Sometimes one is eating, the other one gets in between. It creates all sorts of hierarchical issues. So what I like to do, my methods are really to apply little twists to little things that the humans are going to do every day anyways. So we're going to feed them twice a day. So what we're going to do is put food in the bowls, or in this case, not bowls, but we're going to put them in their feeding apparatus. And then basically when I start doing this, more passive training, they're not allowed to come in the kitchen or the area where the bowls are or where the food is. Then once they're out of the kitchen, I'm going to use the escalating consequences, which I'm going to talk about here in a second, to do that. So once the dogs are out of the kitchen, then I'm going to basically put the food down on the floor, and then they're not allowed in the kitchen, the food's on the floor. And then basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to eat something first. The human who's feeding them should eat something first, something in 5 more bites if you're not going to eat an actual meal. Once I'm done eating, then I'm going to invite the first dog to come in, which I believe is going to be Pixel. When Pixel comes in to eat, the other 2 dogs are not allowed to come in and eat. This way Pixel sees the guardians are controlling the most important activity for dogs, which is eating. And the humans are demonstrating their leadership through their actions. Once Pixel walks over, eats a couple bites, and once she walks away, I pick up the bowl, I dump the bowl empty back in the bag, and I put the bowl or the container back on the floor, and then the dog will usually lick the receptacle, then they have to leave the room. When they leave the room, then I invite the next dog in, which I'm guessing is probably going to be Chewy. Chewy comes in, and when Chewy's eating, the other 2 dogs are not allowed to be in. So we're going to repeat that for all 3 dogs. Now, I talked about passive training a couple times. I like the guardians to come up with a unique command word for each dog. So when each dog is taking its first bite of food, we're going to say grub, chow, feast, eat, comida, supper, whatever the word is. Each dog has its own unique command word. When it takes its first bite of food, we say the command word. We do not try to use the command word until we've been doing this for about 2 months. After a while, when we say feast, that means something to Chewy, but it doesn't mean anything to the other 2 dogs. When Chewy hears feast, there's food in his mouth. The other 2 dogs hear feast, there's no food in their mouth. So this is a great way to create an association. Now, I'd like the guardians to also get in a habit of passive training, which is basically recognizing the dog every time they do any desired actions or behaviors. So every time that June came over, I petted her and said come. Every time she sat, I petted her and say sit. That's how I taught her to sit, is every time I waited for her to sit. As soon as she sit, I gave her the treat and said the word sit. Remember, every time you use a treat, the dog should hear the command word right after the treat goes into their mouth. So after doing that for about 2 hours, she started sitting down faster and faster and getting more treat. Now, I'm not using the word sit yet. I'm only using it during the reward stage. When I'm teaching a dog through passive training, I just wait for the dog to do the behavior on its own voluntarily. Within the 3-second window, I provide a pet or attention or a reward, and then I say the command word. And after you've done that for, like I said, it's a slower way of training. Depends on how often you do it, but usually about a month to 2 months before you can actually start using the word. But then you say sit, and the dog sits. Now, for the sit, in this case, I think the guardians will be able to move a little bit faster. But if you say sit and the dog doesn't do it, don't get upset. Just that means you need more practice. Film that real quick. Oh, never mind. She was in a pretty cute position. Yeah. And you see them nice and playing with each other. Before, Chewy was very upset and not happy because I kind of corrected a couple times. Not in a bad way, but Chewy's like, that's my job. Now, Annabelle, I want to keep on saying Annabelle. Pixel is very, very nervous around new people. And most people try to pet a dog that's nervous or fearful to teach them I'm a good person. But if the dog thinks you're creepy, the more you engage with them, the more you're going to reinforce that. So I earned her trust by not trying to pet her, not looking at her, not trying to entice her. I was tossing treats in her direction from time to time, and I did that. I tried to toss the treat a little bit closer to me each time, so she had to get a little bit closer to me, but then she took the treat and walked away. So each time she does that, she feels more empowered. I was able to walk towards David. He didn't touch me. Nothing bad happened. I got something great, and I moved away, and it was all a good, successful experience. The more that happens, the more dog will continue to do that, and we're building up trust. Let me see. So I'd like the guardians to come up with a list of command words. Try to come up with funny command words, one-word commands, and avoid saying good or go or bad in front of the command word. Just say the command word. You can say the dog's name in the command word if you need to, but I prefer just to use just the command word. That's passive training. Now, once the dogs know how to sit and come and lay down, then I'd like you to start practicing what I call petting with a purpose. Petting with a purpose is simply asking the dog to do something first before you pet it. So the dog comes up and jumps up on you, nothing happens. As soon as the dog, and you tell it to sit and it sits, you reach over and pet it and say sit. And I can do this for passive training as well. The dog jumps up on your shin, you see, I call this light switch off. I'm petting it and it jumps up on me, I stop petting. As soon as it gets off of me, then I start petting again. If your timing is good with that, the dog's like, every time I stop, I climb on him, he stops petting me. If as soon as I stop doing that, he's all over me. And I like him being all over me, so I'm going to do what gets me the attention that I want. Let me see. Other rules. Well, I guess we went over the rules and structure. Teaching the dogs to bark. So one of the things we'd like to do is, teach the dog to bark, we'll talk about in a sec, but there's a bedroom that the dogs can go in and they can stand and kind of look out a little bit under the window. I'd like the guardians to take some paper, put it on the outside of the window so the dogs can't scratch it off, tape it just at the bottom of the window only. So dogs go to that place and they cannot see out anymore. After doing that enough, they'll stop going back to that place because it's not rewarding. I can't see them. And dogs should meet by scent, not by sight. So if they're looking out on the street and they're looking down, they have